evening. And happy solstice. Yay. Welcome to our candle lighting service, a special service of song, listening to songs, singing Christmas carols, an opportunity to light candles, and of course the hot cocoa and cookies afterwards. My name is Reverend Kathy Fernandez, and along with Reverend Michael Benson, we are your spiritual co-directors here. We're glad that you can join us. We hope that if you have your cell phone, that your cell phone is off, just so we don't have interruptions. And while you're turning off your cell phone, why are we here to celebrate the spirit of Christmas? For us to remember, to embody, and to live in the way that Jesus lived as the great spiritual master, teacher, and way shower. Jesus of Nazareth was a human individual who revealed the Christ nature, which was the perfection of spirit in man. And he demonstrated that to the highest degree ever known, and hence became known as Jesus the Christ. The Prince of Peace was a great example for us to follow. So tonight, we're here to remember and celebrate the birth of Jesus and the birth of Christ's consciousness in you. So let's begin. First, the choir will sing Go Tell It on the Mountain, and then together we'll sing our first Christmas carol, Deck the Halls, and the words are on the back of your program.
Go tell it on the mountain. Go tell it in the valleys that my Jesus, my blessed Jesus Christ is born. Jesus is born. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Tell it on the mountain, tell it everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. People go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. While shepherds kept their watching, or silent flocks by night, behold, throughout the heavens there shone a holy light. Go on the mountain, over the hills, everywhere. Go mountain, Christ is born. Hail our Savior's birth. Doesn't it make you want to go? People everywhere want to hear the good news. Go. People everywhere just want to hear the good news. Go and tell your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, your fathers, your friends, and relation, wherever you meet them, everywhere and in all seasons, tell them Jesus is born. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Tell them Jesus Christ.
Please stand and join us for our
Good evening, everyone. And Merry Christmas. And will you please join with me for an opening invocation? As we turn inward in awareness and recognize that this evening is the winter solstice. It is the coming of the light of that symbolic spirit of the Christ. And that Christ presence is within each one of us. We are here this evening to recognize, to remember, and to let it shine more brightly than ever. And so I know that the presence that God gave to the world through this Christ is the spirit that is alive and well in all of us. And so we are open and receptive to allowing the love, the peace, the harmony, the joy, and the beauty of the Spirit to shine forth through each one of us. And it is in that consciousness and the gratitude for what I know about who we are that I release these words into that universal law of mind and know that we are the means by which peace comes to earth. And so I let go, I let it be, and we say together, and so it is.
Good evening. What a joyous and grand moment this is in life, coming together in this light and love and presence of the divine Spirit. Yes, we are alive and well, right here and right now. This evening, I have the privilege of speaking some ideas on before the birth of Christ consciousness. You know, Christmas to me is the most wonderful time of each year. It's a time and a moment that is celebrated in many countries around the globe and is filled with not only the colorful lights which sparkle and rotate and oftentimes blink and blink and blink. Well, there's seasonal music like we've heard this evening in the beginning, and you're going to hear a whole lot more of that. And boy, are we in for a beautiful, beautiful experience. Music that we can sing along with, and yummy foods, and family. Lots of family. Family of birth, family in spirit, family of choice, as we are right now. And celebrations such as this here tonight. Ah, the traditions we have, the traditions we hold dear. Traditions that are the events of life that have come into our lives that we expect and that we feel comfortable with most of the time. Yes, Christmas for me, as is for most people, a most wonder-filled time. Most of us are familiar with the manger story. Yes, I was raised with the manger story, depicting the birth of a child named Jesus. But many of us are not as familiar with what led up to the birth, before the birth of the Christ consciousness, as we term it in the science of mind. So tonight I offer bits of metaphysical interpretation of the story before the birth. I begin with the Old Testament because that's where it begins. Back to the year 2100 BC, before Christ, to the birth of Jesus. In that period of time contains powerful stories. Stories of struggle. Stories of countries and people in battle. Battle over the land and commerce and other people. There was confusion. There was no unity. And most people didn't read or write back then. So the way they did communicate was by word of mouth or stories or songs. Traditions. Well, in terms of religion, the Old Testament, the different groups of people had their own deities or gods. In some cases, depending on the geography and a personal preference, there was a multitude of different gods worshipped by different people. But one of the main ideas in that time, before Christ consciousness, was that God was outside of them, of us. The stories in the Old Testament, I believe, are metaphors and examples and stories about ourselves. They example our stories, our beliefs, our old beliefs. Before Christ consciousness is our old way of being. The Christmas story is also our story. It's the process of the awakening to our spiritual truth, to rise into that level of a greater knowing in the consciousness of this divinity of Christhood, that each of us example to the degree that we can embody this greater idea. In the science of mind, this spiritual truth that we're awakening to is that we are Christ expressing at the point of us. At the point of us right now. We are here and now exempling the point of us as Christ. In other words, God, the Christ consciousness, is the truth of us as spiritual beings and is ever present as us. 'Tis the season, if you choose to accept this mission, to delve deeper beyond the chatter of the mind and what has come before, beyond all labels that we use in our language, to not just remember, but to practice the presence, the Christ presence that is within you. In our program tonight, our Science of Mind practitioners will be sharing snippets of metaphysical interpretations of the Christmas story, so that we may all be reminded about the deeper meanings of this truth. Just before the birth of Jesus, the story tells us there was a bright star which illuminated the way for those traveling to Bethlehem. Tonight, we invite you to follow your own star, the star within you, to trust its guidance, to truly trust its guidance. For when you do, I believe, you move beyond the past, to experience a new level of spiritual enlightenment. Tonight, we are celebrating the gift, the birth of enlightenment, the Christ consciousness. It is the gift of Emmanuel. Open it. Open it. Open it.
O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appears. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel will come to thee, O
Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight.
Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel will come to you, all Israel. O O come, Emmanuel. O come.
Can I ask the practitioners to please come forward? And while they do that, as Reverend Michael mentioned, metaphysically speaking, the Bible is really a story of our human consciousness unfolding over time. All of the people, places, and events in the Bible represent qualities, traits, habits, and abilities within each of us. The practitioners will be sharing snippets of the metaphysical interpretations of the Christmas story so that we may all be reminded of the deeper meaning.
In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. And Joseph went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth, to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. Now, the metaphysical meaning of census is a time when all of the beliefs, values, assumptions gained from sense consciousness, which means what we're aware of, are called into account through our personal introspection. Galilee is a region in ancient Palestine. It metaphysically represents subconscious feelings and emotions, which senses evolving truths. Anybody here ever worked with subconscious ideas that evolved us into truth. Nazareth is a town in the region of Galilee. Nazareth typifies the commonplace mind of man, but it is a place of development where the Christ consciousness comes into expression. It is a state of awareness in which we center our thoughts on spiritual things and not on material things.
Judea is another region of ancient Palestine. Judea means praise or spiritual recognition. Judea is the acknowledgement of our oneness with our God essence, the eternal presence. Bethlehem means house of bread. It is the abiding place of universal substance. It is the place of Jesus' birth. Bethlehem is a city in Judea. Jerusalem is also in the region of Judea. It's about 10 miles away from Bethlehem. Jerusalem means habitation of peace, the state of inner peace. In man, it is the abiding consciousness of spiritual peace, which is the result of continuous realizations of spiritual power, tempered with spiritual poise and confidence. Jerusalem represents a consciousness filled with the peace which passes all misunderstanding.
Mary. Mary represents the feminine, the soul, the love, our pure and superior intuition, which is open and receptive to divine ideas. Through devotion, Mary prepares herself for the higher life, and life takes form in her. The virgin birth represents the undefiled and purified stillness of mind in us, which gives birth to our awareness of the Christ nature within. The Immaculate Conception is when our intuitive intelligence, love, and receptivity to our innate divinity are raised to their highest and purest spiritual essences. Then we immaculately conceive a pure, Christed idea. Herod. Herod wanted to have baby Jesus killed. Herod represents our egocentric willfulness, characterized by its paranoia and our material aggrandizement. Joseph represents our masculine side, our dutiful intellect, and our imagination. Joseph is also representative of the realm of forms. Joseph, as protector, led Mary and Jesus into Egypt to avoid Herod's will from being done. The Christ child. The Christ child represents the birth of the Christ nature born with each of us, and the nativity event. When we reach a certain stage of spiritual development, our divinely inspired intuitive abilities spring into action, and we immaculately conceive because of our newborn Christ awareness, the virgin birth.
The inn. The inn represents the unenlightened intellect, which has no room for higher spiritual thoughts. The stable. The stable represents the earth plane into which Jesus is born. The manger represents human emotions associated with our human personality. The manger is the life of the body in which the new life is first manifested. Angels. Angels are our higher thoughts, insights, and inclinations, which come from a consciousness grounded in truth principles. The animals at the nativity scene. The donkey represents humility, courage, and persistence. The ox represents infusion of cosmic and spiritual forces. The sheep represents obedient intentions. And the lamb represents purity, innocence, and harmlessness. And then the camel. The camel represents strength, endurance, and perseverance.
Shepherds, the humble, trustworthy, natural thoughts we have that watch over our good and obedient intentions. And the intentions are sheep. Wise men, the esoteric knowledge and superior spiritual insights that make us open and receptive to our Christ nature. The East, that state of higher consciousness within us. Star, the spark of precognition, universal knowing within us that prompts our receptivity to our divine nature. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These valuable items were standard gifts to honor a king or deity in an ancient world. Gold is a precious metal. Frankincense is a perfume or incense, and myrrh an anointing oil. Gold is our ability to transform material consciousness into spiritual awareness so that our possessions do not possess us. Frankincense symbolized the recognition of Jesus' priesthood, his stature as a spiritual leader and teacher. Frankincense is known to help detach from that which doesn't have deeper spiritual meaning, such as over-attention to materialism, helping the one better integrate with the higher self. And myrrh. Myrrh is known to unite the spiritual with the physical in a person. It was drunk by ancient Hebrews to raise their consciousness. It also helps the higher self manifest and transcend the material, letting go of anything which no longer is needed for our higher good.
So in summary, in our own hearts and minds, we travel to many places, no? We discover many ways of being. And we turn to our higher self to discover our true spiritual nature. We discover I am that I am, the Christ. By continually unifying ourselves with the highest in our thoughts, words, and actions, we too shall become the Christ made manifest. So come, all ye faithful, that are faithful to your true nature, and adore it. So let's please stand and sing, "O come, all ye faithful." Thank you. So now you've heard some of the deeper meanings of the Christmas story. And knowing those deeper meanings, it's an invitation to take the Christmas story into your life personally, as an invitation to allow your Christ to be born in you and to be demonstrated through you and as you. Yes, Jesus of Nazareth became the Jesus the Christ, revealing that Christ nature. But what is that Christ consciousness anyway? It is your true spiritual higher self beyond the physical. It is living from a state of mind and heart that is centered in omnipotence, all potential, omniscience, all-knowing, omnipresent, everywhere present. Christ consciousness is beyond the physical and lives from the truth. So what does that look like? It looks like when ego gives way to wisdom, when judgment is released, when there's no need to control life or to control others. When you see no others because all others are you. When you empty your mind and you find that peace that passeth all understanding. When your heart is wide open and you can only be love. When you bring that presence wherever you go. When love is all that people feel and see when they meet you. When grace and gratitude just roll out of every moment with ease. When you understand and stand in your divinity. When you stand in your natural and authentic power, which is not forced power, but the power of understanding all potential and capability that's right there before you as you. When you realize, I am that, I am. When you truly understand, just as Jesus stated, I am the light of the world. Yes, Jesus was the way shower, the teacher, the master of demonstrating this true spiritual nature. And he said, follow me. not to have us stare at him like a signpost or to separate ourselves from him. He said, follow me, as in offering us the personal invitation to be like me. You have that capacity. Know ye not that ye are gods? Jesus taught that there is a power in man that gives him authority over things of the material world. This is the principle in the higher self, the spiritual man, the Christ consciousness. So yes, each of us has within us this Christ consciousness, and the invitation is to look in, look within. Do you recognize, do you realize your oneness with that? To be one with your own divine nature, to be the goodness and the light that you are, just as Jesus demonstrated. So by continually unifying ourselves with our higher self, we can connect with that consciousness within. Of course, the question is, will you? Will you give yourself the gift of allowing that Christ consciousness to be demonstrated through you? It is a spiritual practice. Will you accept the invitation to practice your spiritual Christ nature? It is within you, and it's awaiting your recognition. Do you see it? Do you hear it? Do you know it? And do you listen to it? Please stand and let's sing together, Do You Hear What I Hear? Thank you, everyone. And now we're going to move into the offertory portion of our service. So I'll ask for the ushers to please bring their baskets. And Cara will be playing What Child Is This? And our blessing together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I have, and all that I receive. And so it is.
Encore. Wow. That was so wonderful. Thank you so much. Isn't that wonderful? Let's give them another hand. That's great. Spirit Choir. Yes. The name is very appropriate. Very appropriate. Well, we've come to one of the many reasons and one of the highlights of candlelight service, and that is the recognition of candlelighters. This is a very sacred time in our service when we share in the consciousness of this Christ light. Would our candlelighters please come forward? James Babcock, Tony Campbell, and Ken Keith. Now it's my joy to share 30 or 40 minutes each of how these people light up and shine in our presence, by their presence. James Babcock, to your left, he is everywhere. He is truly everywhere. He is a committed, serving, loving presence. He is co-chair of the Taurus Food Group. He's on our social team. That's food as well as being friendly. He is part of the Adopt a Highway team. And he fills in with compassionate care. Mr. Babcock lives in Paradise. He makes the drive. And he's here at least every Sunday, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. A very committed soul, and his presence, his light, his love is evident every moment he walks into the room. Tony Campbell in the middle. I've known Tony for as long as I've been in Science of Mind. I think we go way back to not the manger, but near in this teaching. And she has always possessed such a loving, caring nature. And so it is evident in her bright voice in the Spirit Choir tonight. But where she really shines is the lead, the chair, the heart of our compassionate care team. Her leadership and her, she is Miss Compassion. And all of those on her team, we are so pleased to have you as one of us. Thank you so much. And Ken Keith, I've known him a year and a half, but he's the kind of individual who knows no strangers. He has jumped in, not feet first, but head first in the design team at this community, as evidenced by the colors and the ideas of placement. It's with his excitement, enthusiasm, and downright drive that we have the completion of this new look in our loving space. So let's recognize all three right now. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Well, each of us is an expression of the Christ light. And to each of us is given the responsibility, the opportunity, and the duty to let our own light shine. None can illuminate the world but us. Now you may each retrieve the candle from underneath your seat if you haven't already done so. And I'll invite Reverend Kathy up to assist me in the demonstration of how we light the candles. Pay rapt attention. The candle lighters will, when instructed, light their light from the one candle. Thusly, not yet. Okay, the candle lighter will come down the 3 aisles with their candle upright like this, like this. Each of you will then dip yours into the candle light. Then you will hold yours upright, and the person next to you will dip theirs into yours. Do you have that? That way they will not drift. So once lit, stay upright. That's a call. So I will invite the candle lighters to take their light from the one light. And as we begin the candle lighting, I will invite Cara to begin playing Silent Night. And once all of the candles are lit, I will ask the lights be turned down for just a moment, and please remain seated.
Together in this consciousness of the light that is within, shining in each individual here, I'm knowing that as we move out into the world, our light shines, and just as we pass the light, we continue to pass the light beyond the lighting of the candle, but knowing the truth of the Christ consciousness within us. And so as we move throughout this season, we move with the love, the joy, and the peace of this consciousness, knowing that as we do, we light ourselves and the world in knowing our greater truths. And so we release this with thanksgiving, letting it be so, and together we say, and so it is.